of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll call this regular board meeting to order. Roll call shows that Peter and Dawn are absent. Peter is excused. Dawn may be showing up here shortly. And we have the June 7th, 2018 regular board meeting minutes. Any questions, comments, corrections?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'd second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. June 7th, 2018 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. June 7th, 2018 closed session minutes.
I'll move to approve.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. There are no agenda changes, no public hearing, and we go to license permit.
The following operators have been approved by police, and then there's 3 temporary Class B retailer licenses, and then the combination Class B for heroes. Pardon me? Yes.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. We have any prerequisites?
Jim Mueller, 806 Hickory.
That's on the same, Jim?
Oh, sorry. I saw her, I was waiting for her to tell you I said I can't hear anything because the hall is up. So I just wanted to say, Jim Moore, 806 Hickory Street, the wheel tax. So I don't think the wheel tax is really, if you weigh everything out, I don't think it's a good idea. I do think that it would potentially provide some relief for assessments, but when you're weighing out the benefit versus the cost of it, you're only talking $40,000-$50,000. I mean, that the negative impact that you're going to have because you're adding another tax, because it's going to get in the paper and everybody, because New London, it was all over the papers in New London and everybody hated it, and everybody still talks about it if you go to New London. You know, I don't know that it would be a major negative impact, but I do think it would be a minor positive impact. My feeling on it would be, you know, there's 27 communities that do have it. Or something of that nature. Maybe wait and bring that up in a couple of years when it starts to be the wave of everybody doing it, and then it's not such a big deal, and then the negative is much lower than what, you know, the small positive that you're going to receive. At $20, I could care less about the way the few vehicles and the kids are. So we'll end up with 4 vehicles, so it costs me $80 a year, and I could care less about it, right? And I understand exactly what assessments are because I've been through that. But you know, I don't see it as a net gain. I see it as a potential net loss for PR, for being attracting growth to the area at the same time as paying out your debt. So which one's more important? You know, the $40,000 or making Hortonville more attractive for growth and people to come here. Now, we do have, just like the other gentleman who sucked up most of the time, who left here, we have a big PR problem in the city already, in the village already, because of the nature of our taxes and our water and things like that. So I think that adding anything to that is probably a bigger negative than the positive that we would see from it. I think it's a good idea to explore, and you know, and I don't fault anybody for looking into it and seeing what the numbers are and see how it would work out. But as a net overall, I think it's probably at this time a bigger loss than it is a gain. And it's just my personal opinion as to how, you know, you have to look at what are you gonna gain from it and what are you gonna lose from it? And, personally, it would've been nice to have some more money, but if it wasn't gonna be a big deal, it wasn't gonna be a big deal. That's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Anybody else?
No, that's it.
Moving on, we have no committee reports and no unfinished business from previous meetings. We'll go into new business, swearing in of Chief of Police Christine Brownson and Clerk Treasurer Jane Booth. We'll start with Jane. You're first, Jane.
Okay. You want me to just stand here?
Okay. Repeat after me. I, Jane Booth,
I, Jane Wood,
have been elected or appointed to the office of Clerk Treasurer.
having been appointed or elected to the office of Clerk Treasurer,
Swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my
and
ability.
will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability. So help me God.
Welcome to the village, and now we have our new police chief, Christine, who will be starting officially on Monday, right?
Yes. Let's go here. You wanna?
Have this, so you can repeat after me. I, Christine Brownson. I, Christine Brownson. Having been granted police powers in and for the village of Hortonville.
Yes.
Have been granted police powers in the village and for the village of Hortonville. Swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
Swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin.
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin.
I will enforce the laws of the United States of America,
I will enforce the laws of the United States of America,
the State of Wisconsin,
the State of Wisconsin,
and the village of Hortonville,
and the Village of Hortonville,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of Chief of Police to the best of my ability, so help me God.
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the Chief of Police for the best of my ability, so help me God.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations.
And welcome to the village. And before we go on, I would like to let everybody know that on behalf of the village, thank Diane for what she has done for economic development and wish you well in Bellevue, as this is her last village board meeting with the village of Hortonville. Thank you, Diane. Now we'll get to the other part. Going to ask for a motion for a 15-minute recess because they have brought cake to celebrate.
I'll make a motion for a recess.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are going to take a recess to have some cake and, I don't know, brought drinks, but to celebrate our new employees. Alcohol. Going here. Next on the agenda is a master services agreement.
Have us rescind the liquor license and do that because I see they added, you pay the East Valley, and that's the little part of it.
Yeah, that's a good catch, Tom. Thank you.
You made a motion to rescind.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now we will go back to the combination class B and class D for any malt beverage and liquor license.
And I'll take the motion again.
Without
Without the East Valley, East Side Alley.
Thank you for catching that on. That's, yeah.
Do we have a second?
Okay. I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved without the east side alley part on it. Thank you, Don.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we'll move on to the master services agreement with MSA.
Oh, I'm sorry. Al is here from MSA, and so I'm just going to turn it over to Al.
Thank you. I appreciate the consideration for the village to allow MSA to be one of your service providers. What I have before you tonight is a master services contract. What it is it's not for any specific task. It's just the conditions of services that we can provide to you. It's a contractual language that would stand behind that. In this particular agreement, which we have with a lot of communities, every time a need or a task or service is requested, we do it simply in the form of a task order. It's a very simple document that gets exchanged back and forth. It agrees to the dollar amount, the scope, and the timing of what's being requested, and with the basis of the master services agreement covered and the fine details of it. So that's what the master services agreement is for. It's for tasks less than $35,000. It's a 3-year contract, and it's just that makes MSA available when needed for the public works director, the administrator, and others of the village.
As an example, when we were exploring the idea of the annexation, we had asked MSA to prepare some maps for us, very low cost, but technically there was not a contract in place, so this protects both sides so that when we ask them for small projects like that, they can do it.
Yeah, we did this when I first started 8 years ago. We went through a whole list of these types of consultants, and it's just as nice as it's a good idea to have that as a in place, kind of a placeholder for anything that we do.
Sure.
My question on this is 1.2.2, where it says task order will be deemed executed if not returned with comments within 2 business days. Now I could see where that could come into play, especially when we're going to may have an interim in here that'll only be here a couple days during there.
We've never initiated that. Generally, it's either verbal. What we prefer to do is get a written response. It can be emailed or sent over. But we've never instituted one where we just go ahead with the work within 2 days without hearing back.
Is it the possibility we could get that sentence removed from there then?
I could certainly check into that.
Because,
You know how
okay, you don't do it now, but what happens next year if you have somebody else in charge and they see that?
Where do you get that argument?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And my other one was 1.3. Do we want to have this for 35,000? Because we could potentially have an administrator that could 1 week say, okay, this one's 20,000, and next week we have another one for 25, and because it's in here at 35, they could do it without the board's approval. I'm wondering if
That's where on the village though, is our policy is that we wouldn't be able to execute something over 30, of that amount without coming to the village. So regardless of it being in there, I mean, it doesn't supersede our policy.
Well, I think what,
Or am I okay,
I think what he's saying is that that's a sizable expenditure without board approval.
Right, and I'm saying that our own policy would prohibit us from doing that. I mean, it doesn't matter what this agreement is on that part because it's not with policy, so an administrator, public works director would be able to do that.
Well, but if they have, contractually, if you think the administrator has that authority, there could be an issue on that.
Would you suggest we put a limit?
I think,
Is there a dollar?
Yeah, well, what's our policy, Diane?
Isn't it $5,000?
I know that's what we've always talked about. I don't, okay.
Yeah.
that unless we could see the policy that actually gives a number.
I mean, I think that's probably good practice just to say $5,000 because, if it's a little minor thing that you got to get done right away, fine, but anything else, quite honestly, it should be brought to the board on those types of expenditures, so we shouldn't leave it we shouldn't leave that responsibility in the hands of the administrator who could actually get some backlash if they do something and we're like, what the hell are you doing?
Or department heads.
Right.
Right.
So I think that's a good point as well.
Now, the other question I think that you're raising now, if I'm reading this right, it's any one task order exceeding 35,000, right?
That's correct.
And what Al is saying is, you could do one each week and they could all be 5,000, all of a sudden you got $50,000 in tasks in 5 weeks.
Absolutely. It's not like the 35 is a cumulative limit.
So could we ask to strike that section, approve it with that section struck and just do it based on village policy? So that we don't hold up the master services agreement, we just remove that part and are asked to remove, the board approve it with the understanding that 1.3 and 1.2.2 be removed? And then, of course, you'd have to see if that's acceptable to MSA, but...
I don't know, we couldn't have that before.
Well,
But I mean, I just...
if you agree 35 is, what would you recommend, based on your experience in some of these tasks, what do you think is a good number?
I guess what comes to mind is the 5, but then I see your point on...
4, 9 every week.
But again, that would be, I guess the thing that I'm struggling with is because it's kind of by having this and discussing it, it's really putting village policy to MSA. This is their policy, we won't even get there. As long as our administrator and department heads follow village policy, we won't even be in this situation. So I don't even understand how that can be, because we're trying to project village policy into a contractual agreement with another agency.
Yeah, but so, if I'm understanding this correctly, within 5 days, they submit a written task order. Does that task order wait until the village board meeting?
Yeah, I mean, the administrator then would take that task order or department head, and if it's, in excess of what is village policy, would have to bring it to the board for approval. So it's, all of that duty and work is on the department head, on staff, on village staff, not on MSA.
Yeah.
So I just don't see how that, I mean, my position on it is 1.3 doesn't affect the village. That's just their, their internal thing, but I mean, any village policy is that we have to bring it to the board for approval.
Okay.
As long as we have the other provision out of there that, it's not deemed executed within 2 business days.
Yes, I think 1.2.2 needs to be, should be removed, because then that gives village authorization by default.
Yeah, I think if we do get 1.2.2 out of there, that I would agree with your statement, as long as we have an understanding.
Yeah, as long as we got the policy that department heads have to follow, I guess that'd be okay with me. Was that okay with the rest of the board?
I have one other question. Was there an attachment to this, Al?
Not to this particular, generally if a task... Yeah, if a task order were to come in, that would have an attachment, labor weights and things
Like
like
it
that.
says, as to scope, pricing.
All your unit pricing and everything else.
Yep, scope, pricing, labor rates, those are all included with the task order attachment.
Okay.
What are those measured against? I mean, are we gonna, who looks at that and says those are fair rates?
Be whatever department head or administrator, whatever is responsible for the specific project. I mean, to use their judgment. I mean, if it's a street or engineering, that would go to Carl. If it's, mapping services for annexation, that would be to the administrator. So be delegated out to whichever department head is responsible for that project.
Anybody else has another question? Any other questions? I make a motion to approve it based on the recommendation of the 1.2.2 be revised to eliminate the
Last sentence.
last sentence. And do you care about 1.2.3?
No.
I'll second that, Kelly.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
Then Al, if you want to see about that, about removing that, and then send me a copy with it removed, if it's okay by MSA, and then we'll get the signatures on our end.
Sure, I'll check on that tomorrow. I'll get back to you, Diane.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next, we have an administrator position, presentation by Russ Van Gunkel, Integrated Public Resources.
And I'm just going to start a little bit first is, if you recall at the last board meeting, the board had directed me to post the position, and I then sent you an email with an attachment from a letter from WCMA, a senior advisor, because I reached out to WCMA because when I looked at the job description and our ordinance that creates it, it really should be updated. Additionally, we didn't have any salary range on it. And throughout the job description, it refers to the administrator as a he. So we should probably remove gender pronouns. But anyway, so I sent that letter to all of you from WCMA. So based on his letter, and I just wanted the village board to be weighed in again before I went ahead and posted it. So I have not posted it yet, and then Russ can take it away.
Good evening. My name is Russ Van Gunkel. I currently reside in the town of Winneconne. I've been in local government for about 35 years. I started out, I actually started out in Minnesota, but I became the administrator in Little Chute, Wisconsin. I was there for just over 10 years. My background started out as a clerk, a treasurer, finance person, became the administrator. And then I moved to Brown Deer, and I was the village manager there for about 15 years. And after 15 years, I went up to the city of Eau Claire for just about 4 years as a city manager in Eau Claire, and retired from public life about 2 years ago, and now work for Integrated Public Resources, or IPR, which is a division of McMahon Group, engineering group. I think you had received in your packet some information about our company, about the services we provide. And what I understand is the village of Hortonville may be looking for interim administrator and then also somebody to help out with the recruitment for a new administrator. We can do both of those services for you. And you can answer any questions about myself or my background if there are any before I go on to the next step. So just checking in to see if anybody had any questions about me or our firm.
Does anybody have any questions for us?
So what we would do is work on an hourly basis, and we could talk about what kind of hours you would need for interim services. We would charge $110 an hour. We would present a contract to the village board for your consideration, and we could incorporate the recruitment services into that hourly charge. So I could be doing some of the tasks while I'm here at Village Hall, and that would help hold down some of the costs. Typically, on our recruitment process alone, would normally go about $8,000 to $9,000. But again, we could work on a schedule that is beneficial for the village. Talk to Diane and the village president, maybe doing 2 days a week. I'm currently the interim administrator in Bellevue, so Diane and I would be kind of exchanging positions. And there I'm doing 3 days a week. That seems to work out quite well. I've also done interim services for the city of Mondovi, which is near Eau Claire on the western part of the state. So we can go through a typical recruitment process. Normally takes about 12 to 13 weeks. But we typically would sit down with the village board or the elected bodies, review the position descriptions, look at some of the characteristics that you'd want to see in a new administrator. For some of our clients, we have prepared like an 8 to 10 page profile about the position and the community. We would submit that profile to the village board for their approval, and then that profile would actually include the job announcement. Now, if we wanted to short circuit that, we could go right to just doing a job announcement or an ad, and we could do that a little bit quicker. That would take about 2 weeks off the schedule. We would then place the ad in the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, WCMA, the City Managers Group, and other websites. We would also do promotion on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, to help reach out to contacts. And then we would also contact individuals that we know that might have an interest in the position to help get the word out. We would set up an application deadline. Our process would include screening the applicants. We typically put our applicants into 3 categories: preferred, potential, and then those that we would not consider for further advancement. We would give you a list of all the people that were applied, or all the candidates. But we would also give you a recommended list of 3 to 6 candidates, so we think might be a good fit. We would sit down and talk with the village board to come up with a list of finalists for the oral interviews. Our process includes an oral interview. If you want, we typically do a community meet and greet. That's being kind of common on the recruitment process. We would probably also suggest an interview with selected staff, of course, an interview with the elected officials, and then we typically do some type of writing exercise to get an idea of what kind of writing skills the candidates might have. We would sit down with the village board during that interview process, and then we could assist you with the selection of your preferred candidate. If you come to agreement on a preferred candidate, then we would work with the candidate and convey the terms and conditions until an agreement is reached. If you want an employment agreement, we will assist with that, and then we would notify the applicants that are not selected as part of our process. So that's how a typical process would work. I took the liberty of just putting in some assumed dates, and I can give you a draft schedule if you'd like to see that tonight, and talk about what kind of process that might look like.
Explain to me how long the process took at Bellevue.
Well, I started...
Oh, I was gonna say, this was an interesting one, because they split the duties of interim and recruiter. Russ was the interim, but not the recruiter.
That recruitment process started in January, and we just announced the candidate recently. If you look at an accelerated schedule, we could probably have interviews in August. If we do this whole profile component, we're probably looking like 3 to 4 weeks later, like in September.
Well, I'm doing the math in my head right. The process took you over 4 months at Bellevue.
I did not do the recruitment process. Our firm did not do the recruitment process in Bellevue.
I understand. So that kind of leads me to my other question. When you kept saying "we," how many people are we?
There's another gentleman that has experience in local government. Rick Hermes is part of our IPR team.
Okay.
That was included in your handout. We also have a person that specializes in park and recreation planning and services, a grant specialist, and a couple of administrative. We also, in addition to doing administrative services, we do what's called private-public partnerships, where we do some development stuff as well.
Which right now to me is like, doesn't have any, that has no relevance to what we're talking about.
Right,
Yeah.
but the administrative services is basically 2 individuals.
Okay. So when you're talking about, and you say that you personally, if we would do this, you would personally be the temporary administrator?
Yes, our proposal is that I would be the temporary or interim administrator.
Al likes to call it a rental.
So what kind of expense at $110 an hour? I just did you for 13 weeks at 2 days a week, that was $22,000.
Just to backtrack, Kelly, the reason why we came up with the 2 weeks is because we figured out, 2 days a week, is because we figured out what the village would not be paying me, just so you know.
That's okay. I'm just trying, what I'm just trying to get to is, at the end of the day, at 13 or so weeks, we have a new administrator in our possession.
At your service.
Wow.
We've hired someone, let me go there.
Yes.
Are we talking about 22,000, 33,000, 100,000? What are our estimates?
You know.
What's our guess at what it's going to cost us?
You're probably talking about $22,000.
So the other person works for free, or you're just?
No, I would be doing the work.
Okay, so Rick isn't gonna be doing anything?
No, he would be backup. If something were to drastically happen to me,
So you're...
our firm would be able to fill in.
I'm getting confused, that's why I was confused, because you kept referring to "we," and I was...
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry, I don't have-
People, no, I just...
I don't have a mouse in my pocket.
No, that's what I wanted to make sure of. So we're looking at probably an outline of about 20 to, I mean, realistically, $20,000 to $30,000.
Right.
And you said we backed into that based on what that time frame would be without an administrator, so that we'd have that budgeted cost.
And what I did is I figured out just weekly, how many hours of Rick's, I'm not
Russ.
got me saying it, Rick, Russ's time, how much of his time at $110 an hour, my salary plus benefits, and, you know, the total expense that the village pays for me could cover 2 days of Russ's time per week. So I just figured out weekly. So in 2 days a week for however long, in perpetuity, would be a net zero.
Okay, thank you.
I can tell you from my past experience in local government that you are getting into the point of time where you might need some more effort to assist. We're getting to budget time, and budget time is pretty important time to coordinate with staff, to coordinate with the elected officials, that whole budgeting process that leads to the administrator giving you a recommended budget to consider. So we're willing to work with you on an hourly basis. We might have to have some conversations about additional hours come August, September,
That's why
July.
Those additional hours could be used from not having a police chief from January until here, because we did budget for one for the whole year.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's gotta come from something.
Yes.
If we do this. It's not that we can just...
But it's not something we just have to grab from, but we do have
Absolutely.
the police chief position that we did budget for, have an ad.
We've always had good department heads that can find money. Unbelievable. So, okay. What, I'm guessing they don't have you just hanging on a hook in the back room waiting for you to start a job. I mean, is this something that we need to do relatively soon if we wanted to get your services?
We've had some communication with another community. Right now, I'm working in Bellevue, and actually Bellevue's asked me to stay on for 3 days to kind of do a transition period with Diane.
Oh, you need no transition.
I was gonna say, she doesn't need that, she didn't get it here.
And, you know, there's other projects that we do, like I was telling you before, with the development side of things. And so we're kind of pulled away from that. Otherwise, I'd like to fish.
But you could start immediately, but we don't have an indefinite amount of time in order to make this decision.
Correct. I mean, it's at your decision. I did put together, again, a rough schedule based on if you wanted to move forward. I could start with some of the preliminary process, depending on what kind of process you wanted to do for the recruitment. I could start that immediately if you have an interest.
Does it make any sense for you to start before Diane leaves so that there's a transition period there?
I think Diane and I will be in conversations quite a bit.
Just because of the fact of the relationship that we have right now?
Yeah. You know, obviously, when I started in Bellevue, we had a 3-day transition period that kind of helped with, you know, getting to know the people in the organization, getting to know some of your processes and procedures. So it might be helpful, but I got a feeling that Diane and I will be in pretty close contact.
So if we did this after Independence Day, that probably wouldn't hurt us at all?
No, it's just, again, as I see it, your biggest hurdle is to try to figure out how fast you want to get somebody in here.
We don't want to make it a slow process.
Yeah.
And so you know, Diane's already got 6 pages typed out of things that, for the new administrator to do.
I got 12 pages waiting for her to double.
Because I haven't had time to work on it.
What are we looking to do tonight? Are we looking just to have this discussion? Are we looking to go ahead and look for more approval? Or are we looking to do what?
Well, I have I didn't know how you guys wanted to go, so what,
I don't either.
I mean, there's certainly the opportunity to make, you know, to have some direction, make a motion here. I also have a closed session with 2 different items. One, you know, regarding negotiation, because I didn't quite follow that one, but Bob, if I wasn't quite sure what the discussion would be in closed session if they were to about this.
Well, you never, I guess, we didn't know.
Right, we didn't know if there was going to be negotiation.
Right, so you put the closed session on there so you can have it, but, if you are inclined, if you have an inclination at this point, and, you can do so in open as well, but.
Yeah, that's okay, that's what I thought.
Right.
And there are some things that are pending that I'm working on that are, I would say, high priority, that the village does not want to sit on a shelf.
I mean, at the end of the day, we just hired a new chief, we just hired a new clerk. When this happened to us before, we had, a chief that had been here for a good number of years, we had a clerk that had been here forever, and not to take anything away from Lynn, but she, almost ran the place, and we had a lot, we had a lot of experience with our department heads where we could literally lean on them to take up the slack, and nothing against you, Jane, please understand, it's just, and a new librarian, and I mean, we had a librarian that was here for, since, forever too, and it was a completely different circumstance. We don't have that here. The fact that it's a net zero, and again, we might not be there, but that at least initially we're trying to make this a neutral, budget neutral transition. I think it's a good idea. I don't know about Russ, but
And I would say,
no, but I mean, I think it's, and that's just me, guys, that's just my personal opinion. I think it's probably something that we would benefit from.
I agree with you, Kelly. We have so many irons in the fire right now, especially when we talked about development. We talked about how we're trying to economic development right now. We've got so many, you have so many irons in the fire right now when it comes to developers and that are,
It's just a time that I don't think we can just, I don't think we can just put this on the shoulders of our department heads and say, suck it up, and I don't think we can do that.
what I would say too, especially with the, a combination of, as you had said, about not the long-term experience, with the village, but then also, as Julie was saying, is when I started in that interim, there wasn't development happening at that point, and we've got Commonwealth, we've got that one, we've got one that we're talking about tonight, and I had one knock on my door today that needs to be chased.
No, and so I guess where I'm going with this, guys, and I don't know that we want to take a lot of time, of anybody's time, but I think it's a good idea. I don't know that we need a whole lot more discussion. I think Diane's done the homework on this. We've got, like I said, it's a zero, at this point, it is at least on paper, a net zero budget issue. I don't know why we hesitate.
And if we do come down and decide we need more, we can discuss that at a future date.
But, I mean, if we want to get this guy going, and we want to get an administrator in here, I don't know why we would.
I think what's really unique about this is that you're going to be taking over the position, he's been sitting interim, and he'd be taking over the position. So I think that's quite unique, and that relationship and that fluidity of it is kind of nice too.
Well, there's going to be communication between the two, regardless, so. So I guess, with all of that said, to keep things moving along here, I would make a motion that, are we there? Do we have a proposal in place? Then I would make a motion that we have Russ provide us with that proposal based on the $110 an hour to go ahead as an interim administrator for us and as the recruiter. As the recruitment officer as well, is that what I should be saying?
You could just say interim administrator and recruitment services.
There you go. That's what I just said, Jane.
The one thing though is what your motion said was to have him provide you with it. To me, it doesn't sound like entering into the agreement yet.
Oh, so then by going to do it, that's why I didn't know. That's why I didn't know.
Because you'd put it in writing, wouldn't you?
Yes, absolutely.
That's what I didn't know. If we had an agreement in front of us, I don't see it.
No, he don't.
My point is what I was looking at is, to authorize Al to enter into the agreement rather than just to have Russ provide an
And that's
agreement.
where I was looking at you, I didn't know what that needed to be. So to authorize Al to enter into an agreement with Russ and integrated PI.
Integrated Public Resources.
Yes, thank you.
And I can tell you that that agreement would be on an hourly basis at $110 an hour.
Which is what you already said, sir, yes, sir.
But for the 2 days.
Correct. And based on at least initially 2 days a week.
Okay.
With that being fluid, depending on what we need, what is necessarily needed.
What about
I'm sorry,
beginning?
Jane, that's just a lot of.
Yeah, beginning when?
I would say as quickly as he can get a proposal to us, and as quickly as Al can get it done, to get at least the recruitment process.
Well, after your
Here, let's
3
face
days.
this.
We're only a week away, technically.
Now we've got a planning and zoning meeting tonight. but-
You're a week from Monday. I mean, he's not gonna get, even if he gets a proposal to Al tomorrow and he enters into it, he's not gonna start until maybe next week.
Yeah, the following Monday, I'm gonna be there and he's gonna be with me over there.
As far as I'm concerned, he can get it to him and we can, that would be my recommendation, or that would be a part of what my motion was, that we would do this as quickly
Catch on
as
that,
possible.
Jake.
And again, sorry, Gene. You get the gist of what I'm trying to say. right?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
3 days with Bellevue.
Job share. So, I got that motion now.
I'll second Kelly's.
Whatever.
If you think, whatever you say.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I was struggling.
Could I ask for just one more point of clarification, if I may? Of
course.
Because I think the biggest thing facing the village would be trying to get the process rolling on the recruitment side of things. And if you don't mind, I'd like to give you at least a copy of what I put together, so you can at least start looking at it. Either way, we're probably looking for further board action at your July 5th. Are you meeting on July 5th?
I'm not.
Are you going to be on July 5th?
Yes, as far as...
What's that guy?
Well, we'll have to see if we got a quorum. 2 have already said they're not here.
Okay.
I should be here.
Oh, okay, we have,
Usually are, maybe.
as long as Jeannie's going to be here, we'd have a quorum. Who knows? Because if 3 of us can.
I have one before you get attorney and the clerk. Oh, maybe I have 2. But I wanted to get to...
I don't know.
He's, they're going to take off for national on that.
The decision point before the board is whether or not we would typically do what's called a recruitment profile, which is an 8 to 10 page document. We usually put it as a PDF and probably put it on the village website and our own website. Some clients have decided not to do that. And if we didn't do that, I could have a draft ad to you for your July 5th meeting. Otherwise, I would be probably talking to you more about reviewing the position description and the characteristics you might want to see in a new administrator. We talk about that first and then work out that profile. So the decision point is, do you want the profile or do you want to just go right to the ad?
What does the profile provide? What is it?
It's a 8 to 10 page document, talks about the community, talks about what you're looking for in an administrator. It's more of a recruitment tool, but some communities have decided to go past that and just say, give us an ad, get it out there and get it published.
That's what that would
Did
be
Bellevue
my
have one?
personal.
Did you look at it?
Yes, yes and yes. The one thing, just my 2 cents worth, is I think one of the things that I personally would like to think the village should do is put together, at least maybe not as lengthy, but something that sells the village, because frankly, we can't pay much, so we're not gonna get them here by money. We need to get them here by the village, and, showcase the growth that's happening and stuff like that.
I have one copy of a profile we did for the city of Wyomega, but I did not have time to make multiple copies. So that just kind of gives you kind of a flavor for what we do, a product that we can deliver if you want us to.
Does it have to be created before the position is posted? I mean, couldn't it just be something that trickles in afterwards?
You could, but typically we put the ad as the last page of that profile.
Okay.
So that when the announcement goes out, you have your, kind of your recruitment tool to go with it. But we could certainly work with the village and just do the ad first and then come back with the profile later.
When what I've seen too, oh, sorry.
I was going to say too, is this something that maybe could work with Diane on? Because I think most of the profile would be on her recommendations anyhow.
Yeah. It's just that with the holidays and my other work schedule, I can't get that, a copy to you by July 5th. I can get you an ad by July 5th.
Well,
I think we need to add for sure.
yeah.
I mean, and I know this isn't real world, this is government world, but I mean, I mean, if I've got somebody looking for a job and I put out I put out a flyer that says all of the wonderful things they're gonna do about me, they're gonna go, if somebody seriously wants to come and work for this company, they're gonna find out from other resources what this company is really doing.
And that's why some of our clients have really just said, don't even bother with that.
Right, that's why, and I wasn't trying to be a smart ass, I was just, the government thing might be, people in government might look at that and put a lot of stock in it. I just, where I come from.
Well, and I think more, actually, I think more important than that would be for the board to decide what strengths you want, because, when I sent that job description to that senior advisor at WCMA, when he called me back, he said, no offense, but they want Jesus Christ. Because the job description requires advanced knowledge, and the way he described it is just about everything intermediate and everything else. And my suggestion is to think about what of the, do you want somebody strong in human resources? My thought is not so much, because we don't have that many staff. Strong in finance, not necessarily because Jane's there. I think, purely my opinion, that the village should look for somebody who has strong economic development, because that's what we're hinging, that's what the village is hinging your future on.
And that's why I was.
And planning and zoning.
Yeah. But the point I was trying to make before was, and that's why I think that's why we're hiring him to put that letter together and try to do it before you leave, so that the two of you can come up with that right recruitment.
Oh, okay, I see.
We can certainly work on it together, and if we do get the ad put together by July 5th, the schedule I handed out will be modified, and I'll give you a revised schedule then on the 5th. Because that'll shorten that up a little bit, like I mentioned during my oral
Did you
presentation.
talk to the city council in Wyawega or residents to get this information?
We did it to the city council, and they came up that, well, there's a page on characteristics
Yeah.
and what they were looking for. That would be something we could have a discussion about at a later date.
I just wondered if a subcommittee might be helpful to just get it rolling, just a thought. A couple people, I don't know.
And that's a good thought, Pat, but I would just say that if we can get this guy dialed in and these two together and put that at least that initial job description together for the July 5th board meeting, I think that would go a long way in getting this thing going. Then we can make whatever tweaks to it then.
Yeah, maybe supplement it with
Yeah, but I would hope,
history.
and I would suggest if you can, Russ, to get that to the board prior to the meeting, so we're not just doing it, that night.
Sure.
So, I think that's just a suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to have that back, and then if you want a copy of it, I can get you a copy, but I just only have one with me tonight, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Okay.
And Russ, if you want, you can email it to me, and I can distribute it.
Okay.
If you've got it as a PDF.
Yeah, I think I do.
Should we have a second motion, then dealing with the recruitment?
I thought that was part of his
I
first.
thought you first did not cover that.
No, I said that the administrator and the recruitment.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, administrative and recruitment services.
Thank you. And that's good.
Thank you, Russ.
Thanks.
See you soon.
Any other comments or questions on this? Moving on, we got the temporary closing of alley number 1 from Mill Street to Pine Street for the Hortonville baseball users, or boosters. Boosters. This is something we've done in the past for Parks Park and Sports Bar and Grill.
The only question I have is, and I know this has been done in the past, but I think it's great. But then I noticed last board meeting, we approved motorcycle parking only on that same date from roughly 2 to 5, or it could be a little bit different depending on when this fundraising ride that's coming through. Are there any issues, Brian, with having motorcycle only parking from Pine to Mill and then having the alley closed? Is there any,
Yeah, I know we talked about that today too. I don't, it's hard to know what this ride is gonna bring in. I know they were talking hundreds of motorcycles, and I don't know that they're necessarily a fit between Mill and Pine, but, so the overflow of that could be a lot, but in speaking with Jack, I think that was only gonna be about an hour-ish that they were gonna be there.
the only concern I have is that there's people that live in upstairs, business, upstairs a lot of businesses.
Sure.
Will they be able to, where are they parking? And I think both are great, I'm not digging on that, I just wanna make sure,
Yeah, I don't know, because if we're gonna close down the back and there's nowhere in the front for them to park.
well, we have public parking, but it's behind the post office, which you can't get at
Right.
because the alley closed. And I get why it's a pedestrian safety
Right.
thing, you don't want, there's no other entrance to the
Yeah,
house.
there's entrance on both the alley and, what is the street up there?
Embarrass Street?
Embarrass
Is
Street.
there an entrance?
There's an access on.
Oh, well then, never mind,
Yeah.
never mind. I didn't, for some reason, I didn't think there was. Okay. All right. Then that takes care of that.
It's gonna be busy.
Yeah.
So you're just looking for a motion here now?
Yes,
I'll make that motion.
we have a second.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Approved. Next is ordinance O-7-18 to amend chapter 16 of the Union Cemetery restricted activities. What Carl wanted here was to add in about walking dogs in the cemetery, and he would like to have that restricted. And so that added to the ordinance.
Did we not always, when we do an ordinance, do a first reading and then do the actual voting on it, the second reading?
We have, but I don't believe it is absolutely necessary.
Not all machines.
Okay. I just always thought that was the way it was always dealt with. We did the first reading, no
I was
action
gonna
was
say that.
taken.
The ones I knew of, it's basically a new ordinance, not revising an ordinance.
Okay.
It's varied through the years, and I think, depending on maybe how controversial or how new an idea is, versus, I don't know if this is, if you think this is, but it's varied, to answer your question.
The only
And we
question-
don't have, there's nothing in the law that says that, it's a policy of the board, and some boards will stick to that more strictly than others.
One question that came up was, is there going to be signage so people know that the dogs aren't allowed? Because people that have been walking dogs through the cemetery,
Yes, that's why he wanted this, so he would put up the signs and
okay, somebody asked me
the
that.
police department actually enforces it.
And the reasoning behind it was because of animals defecating in the cemetery, and that's not exactly what you want to go to visit your loved ones.
Yeah.
To enforce it, we'll have to have.
Yeah, that was a question that somebody asked me, is there going to be
There are
signs?
signs.
Let's say no dogs?
Yeah, I think Carl already put the
Right now?
signs up.
They're all.
They can't be enforced.
Or are they new?
Yeah.
Okay, then that,
Yeah.
okay.
That's what I said, Carl has put them up already. It's just
Okay.
that until we did this, they couldn't be enforced.
Okay, must not have been like a month ago.
I'll make a motion to approve 0718.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Next, we have ordinance 0-8-18 to create chapter 3.12 municipal motor vehicle registration fee.
I do think we need to table this for another meeting, for the simple fact, there were some questions on it. Do we put a ending period on this ordinance? Do we lock in the $20? Do we, just work out the bugs in it. That we are specifically using this to assist with roads and nothing else?
That is in
That's in
there.
here.
Already
Okay,
It's under, yeah, it's specifically under number 2, Jeannie, purpose.
yeah, I did see that.
And for when you asked about locking in the $20, it's in here as $20. If it were to be passed, then it's $20 unless or until it is changed by ordinance, by amendment to the ordinance.
And that should probably be stated in there like that, possibly?
No,
Just to make-
That's
we just had a discussion.
It's an ordinance.
any laws, is the law until it's changed.
Yeah, well, it's no different than that other ordinance, we just changed it, yeah. Okay.
Do we lock it in for a certain amount of time, or do we just let this go like they said forever?
That's
That's our option, we can add that in if you so desire. One option might be, like we got our building fees are to be gone, lower building permit fees are until 2020. I mean, we could put a time on there to say, like this is for, or we could put 1 year, or we could put at 2020 when that would.
But stating nothing basically says it's forever.
until it's changed.
Until somebody says, let's change the ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you were to do that, if that's what the board would like to do, is to put a sunset on it, under number 8, it could be a revision and an amendment to the ordinance, or, a change to, for passage that the ordinance shall take effect 90 days after passage and would expire at the end of 2020. For example, like what Al said with the building permit, that's the same time as the reduced building permit fees expires, and the board will have to review that one.
Or whatever date we set.
Just because I didn't get here for the informational meeting earlier, have we heard anything about the legislation as far as them talking about reducing our levy or anything?
Right now-
To the amount of money we take in?
Oh, you mean like counterbalancing this? Not with the wheel tax, and actually they did, in January 1st of this year, they undid one of them that they, because oftentimes any new revenue source, then the legislature reduces our levy by that much, so it ends up being a zero gain, and there are several different things that are that way. One of them they undid recently, and that's the fire protection fee, and while this is always being mulled about and discussed, that's just something that, if I had to guess right now, I don't think they're going to make, down the road pass a law anytime soon that would then equally readjust the levy to account for the new revenue. And the reason I don't think that's going to happen is because there's so many issues with transportation budget right now. Everybody's falling short, so, and that combined with the fact that the precedent set by the legislation that was just done to undo one of those instances where any new revenue in the one circumstance, they would decrease the levy. So I don't think they are going to anytime soon.
Another question that a citizen had asked me was, if this money goes into the village pot, is that something that is then rolled over every year, or does it have to be spent out by the end of the year?
Well, that would be up to basically you could, if it wasn't spent, then you could put it in a reserve account.
Okay, because that was the question was, is it, I don't think there'd be a problem with spending it.
And I think, that's what we do right now is, just like the software purchase that we are in the process of, and the new server and everything, is we put, money into it annually until we had enough to do the project. That may be what this would be too, is if, let's say if we've got the next project we need to get done is $100,000, and this generates, 40, then we'd save it up for a couple of years until you could do it. So maybe it's not a project every year, but maybe it contributes towards a bigger project after saving it up.
So we specifically will have to state that we want a line in the budget for that reason.
I think you could create a reserve
Do you not
a
agree?
reserve fund.
Definitely should
Yeah,
be.
oh, yeah, so that it's directly,
You would have to have a
Yes.
reserve account for that.
yeah, so it's directly accountable to expenditures
It's going to be
and,
equal to whatever we took in.
So it never gets touched.
right, well, so it's
Except for-
not, right,
Just for the.
for anything else,
Yeah.
correct.
Correct, it can't be used for something else, it's in a reserve.
And this might sound like about left field, but what type of interest do we pay when we take out a loan to do a project? Do you know just?
What it has been is in the 3 to 4%.
Usually
So we're
three.
paying interest.
It's always been like 3 1/4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further discussion on 0817? Or 18, excuse me.
Are we clear on if the county would implement a fee, if that would supersede ours? Because I understood, can I ask John a question? Pushing from,
Yeah, we
It
just
was-
did this in New London.
yeah, so did I misunderstand you? That if the county implemented it or the state, that would supersede and overrule the
Yes,
local?
we didn't include it in our ordinance because it just automatically would supersede anything we did. If Outagamie County or Wapaka County, and there's talk that Wapaka County's gonna do it, we're split by 2 counties, then that portion of the city would, the county would get it and we would have to repeal our, or we would have to, ours would be mute.
No, it's both. Both of them are in effect. It doesn't supersede, it would be in addition to. Both the city and the county of Milwaukee have
really?
have them in
I have it
both.
written out here.
Yeah, and it's in the statute. It's
in the
both.
statute.
Two different things.
Yeah.
In 341.353M, it says, "The municipality and the county in which the municipality is located enact ordinance under this section. A motor vehicle customarily kept in the municipality shall be subject to the municipal registration fee and a county registration fee." So yes, therefore, both the municipality and the county would collect a wheel tax simultaneously for the vehicle subject to the fee in the municipality, if each chose to enact an ordinance.
Okay.
I must have been confused with the state then, because there was talk at the time we did ours, there was real serious talk that the state was going to require a referendum. If you wanted to do a wheel tax, then you had to go to referendum. And that's what I must be confused with. Then we just said, well, yeah, well then, we have no choice. If the state says you have to do a referendum, then we had to bring it to a vote.
And the state did, or was contemplating that legislation, but then it did pass.
That's the one they pulled.
So,
back.
correct.
I'm sorry about that. Confused.
Any other questions or comments on 0818? Hearing none, what is, or how would the board like to act on this?
I've heard from 15 people, and the majority said they would rather pay this because it stays in the community versus a higher assessment, and they realize the assessment's not going to go away. But that was my straw poll.
And I've heard a lot from a lot of other communities that wish they never put it in. So, I don't know, and especially if they can double it and you have to pay to both.
I mean, I already told you that I don't like it, so.
No, not at all. I think this should be tabled
I don't think it should be tabled.
till a further date. Look at it again, maybe in a year down the road, see where we're at with budget.
You're looking for, but yeah, I think, but you're looking for a motion, you're looking for a motion on this, right?
Yes.
But I would see if somebody will bring the motion.
Are you talking municipality? It's hard, because I just.
Do we have some kind of motion on this? You want to make your motion on tabling it?
I would like to make a motion to table 08-18 and maybe take a further look at this in a year down the road when we know where we're at with the new budget. Since things were supposed to look up in 2019, in 2020.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Are you tabling to do, like, setting a date? So you look at this after we look at the budget? I mean, or is this just an indefinite?
Well, the motion is for just
She said
A year, okay.
Right before the next budget, which would be 2020's budget.
Again, do we have a second? If not, the motion would die through the lack of a second. Where do we go from here on this?
Unless there's another motion.
I would just make a motion to not do it.
Well, I mean, it can always come up again.
Well, actually,
You can always bring it
Well,
back.
if you, by not having a motion, you're not enacting something that you need to
yeah,
negative
or
motion.
I would second Jeannie's, just to look at this, revisit this in a year. I think it's worth revisiting.
One comment though is if it's specified for a year, then doesn't it take formal action to bring it back? If it says tabled for a year?
Well, it would come back.
Yeah.
Is that what you're-
A year from now, but anything between now and a year, because my concern on saying a year is what if when we start looking at budget coming for 2019 and need this, then it would take a formal action by the board in order to bring it back. Whereas just not taking any action means it can come back at any time without a formal request to bring it back.
Yeah, without the motion.
Because that was my concern, is when you specified a year, because then it really means, it makes it harder to bring it back between now and a year from now.
So then just make a motion to table it at this time.
And I'll second that.
So just for clarity, then, yeah, that you're not taking any action at this time, it's just tabled indefinitely. Is that correct?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. So we got 4-2. Then we move on to ordinance O-9-18 to amend chapter 4.04, Chief of Police.
I brought this forward because, we've long needed to recodify our ordinances, but we just haven't been able to because of lack of budget. So this has been one that's been on the table, but because we now have a new chief, it made me look at it more. And it was more pressing primarily because it still refers to a police and fire commission, which we no longer have. And as long as we were updating it for that, I removed the masculine pronouns of he, so that the position of police chief is gender neutral. So those are the changes, is making it gender neutral and removing references to the authority and responsibilities of the police and fire commission, or police commission.
And you looked at this, Bob?
Yes, it's fine.
And I'd make a motion to approve 0918.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Chief of Police Squad Car.
I put that on there because our chief had asked me about taking a squad car home. In the past, we don't have a written policy, but our past practice has been the chief did when the chief lives within village limits. But I know Sergeant Barr had voiced concerns to me on this, if this were to be, because being out of the village, we don't have an excess of police cars, that it could cause some hardship on officers in the event of an emergency.
Well, yeah, we have a fleet of 4, and now with the 2 SRO positions, there's many times of the day that we have 3 out already. So if we remove one and we have some maintenance issues or a critical incident comes up, we have no spare. So if you live in the village, it's not a big deal because it's an easy swap. But if you're not in the village, that becomes more difficult, and that's just been what our practice is.
Right, and because we don't have policy, and I didn't feel right making this decision on my way out, I felt it would be best to bring it to the board.
Brian, you've never taken a squad home since you've had to cover, have you?
No.
And everything's been fine?
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, in the summertime, it's a little bit different, but the good majority of the year, because of the additional SRO position, we have 3 out. So, you know, maintenance is always the big thing. If we have a car somewhere and then, you know, we don't have an extra. So that's, like I said, in the village, we've had it with the former chief that lived in the village. If we need to take a car over and swap one out, it takes a few minutes. Or if we have an incident that comes up that we need it, to go pick it up isn't as big of a deal, so.
I don't think it should be taken immediately.
And I don't disagree, but my only question would be, we're not stepping forward with the wrong foot with telling her she can't take the car home, are we?
I don't think so. I mean, you know, you could certainly say, you know, in the village limits, yes, and explain why. You know, the reason why she had asked me is because she said in the event she had to get here in a hurry and would need to speed to have the lights on and do it legally.
Can't we just fire one of those little things at the guy?
I really don't think it's a big, I mean, I don't think it is, Kelly, and I also have gotten the impression that she may consider moving to the village.
I agree with, I mean, we have to defer to Brian. And we have to,
Yes.
And if he's telling us that's going to create a hardship, then, and again, I don't want to piss her off, but I also don't want to create a hardship for police.
I agree entirely. Frankly, if I was not leaving, that's what I would have said. It's just made that executive decision. It's just that because I'm on my way out, I just felt, like I said, that it would be better to bring this to the board.
Yeah, I agree.
So do we need a motion for this?
No, I'll just let her know.
Thank you.
And moving on, we got temporary amendment of premises on the Clerks 2 Inc. combination class fermented malt beverage and liquor license for June 23rd, 2018. I take it this so you could have alcohol outside?
Yes, typically, it sounds like he does this pretty much every year, and it's just a amendment to his liquor license, the premises description.
And we do this every year, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we require fencing and...
Correct.
So we just need a motion from the board to go ahead.
Were there any problems with any of this last year?
No.
No?
Not that I know. No, I don't think, we've done this for a few years and I don't recall any problems, so.
It's a fundraiser that gets tons of help, and yeah, it's a good one.
I'll move to approve.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Any other miscellaneous topics for future discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on to report of village officials. Administrator.
This is your last one, make it a good one.
Are you insinuating that one gone? Our administrative assistant / deputy clerk treasurer will be starting July 9th and be here for a week and then off for a week. He's actually already enrolled in the clerk class at UWGB that he did on his own to pay for it, and so he's going, but it's not going to be paid, it's unpaid leave. But he does, so he'll start on the 9th, then be off for the following week and then back. We're really excited to get, I teased Jane and said if I had an opening, I'd try to snatch and steal him from the village. Great guy, very ambitious, very self-motivated, lots of initiative. His plan is to go through the entire clerk treasurer school. I contacted all, references. He's done internships with other village or other municipal governments, got a degree in political science. I think he's going to do a lot of good things for the village. So we all, Jane, myself, and Carl, and the admin staff all sat in on interviews and stuff. So we had some really good candidates, a lot of them. It's just that this one stood out. So that's when he starts. Public fire protection. If you recall at the last meeting, I had mentioned that this, and I mentioned today too during that the public informational meeting, and then again just now when you and I were just, or when you had asked that question about the state then basically reducing levy. The trend has been every time municipal governments have done an alternative source of funding for things because of levy caps, then as soon as that happens, then it's like this piggyback thing that happens, is then the state comes along and closes that door. So one of the things that was happening is that municipalities were taking things off of the levy and putting it on as a special charge, like we do with the ambulance. And then the state would then require that the levy be reduced by the same amount, so it ended up with zero gain. And so the fire protection fee is one of those, and this is a thing that really caused a lot of budget hardship for us this past year, because that is dictated by the Public Service Commission. We have no control over it, and this past year they raised it by $9,000. Our whole budget, cap, levy cap was $13,000, so that, that really hit us hard. So I had mentioned that in the first of the year, the state actually revised that rule, and now for this particular charge, does allow municipalities now to take it off the levy, and then does not penalize and lower our levy cap. So I mentioned that last time, and then I looked further into it because, we don't want to just still keep taxing but call it something different. However, the concern with this one is that because it's out of our control, it can keep getting raised and it keeps being a hardship for us. So one of the things that you can do is it doesn't have to be an all or none. What you could do is take a portion of it off the levy and put it as a special fee. So then at least future increases would not have to be taken directly from the levy. It could be in that special fee. It's so that future tax, increases doesn't hit us in the tax levy, or the levy cap. So I mentioned this last time, you asked me to look into it a little further, which I did, and that's where I found out that yes, you can do it. It is, and the other question that I had was, is it all or none? No, it's not. You can take a portion of it. And then the third one is how you do this. And actually, if the village were to do it, now is the ideal time, and the reason being is because it's got to be in conjunction with the water rate study, which we just recently had done a year or two ago. So because we already have one that's recent and current, then it could be a much quicker and simpler rate study that the PSC would do in order to allow us to take this off. So that's where we are.
Can we set it as a percentage rather than a specific dollar amount, or?
I knew he was
As
going to
an
like some
example,
question.
25% or?
I don't know, I guess what I was thinking, frankly, if I were still here, what I would suggest doing is cap it at the amount that's on the levy at a certain year, or even, 2018, well, no, because my thought was to put the 9,000 as a special fee, and then what it was before is still on the levy, so that the most recent increase would be on there, and that would somehow you'd have to figure out how that would be divided up by all the property owners. I don't know if it can be as a percentage. I've seen it as an amount, so I don't know on that one. And you would also need to, just like we went through with Gold Cross, when you had to figure out how that would be determined for as a special assessment, not a special fee. So.
Don't use that word.
So that's where that stands. So I guess, obviously I didn't have, there's no possible way, and nor would it be advisable to just, get everything together and hurry up and do this. It's just that I think this is information that you need to have in mind and keep in your mind when you start working on budget. Because while I said last year that 2019 budget is going to be better than 2018, and that is true, and all the numbers are looking to be that way, the thing is that 2018 was so hard that even with the increased budget, you're not going to be, you're going to have to pick and choose which programs to bring back that we suspended in 2018. It's not going to be all and then we've got extra money. It's going to be, what do we bring back? 2020 is looking to be much better, and that's because all of the development that happens that increases our net new construction and therefore gives us more levy, it's allayed. So right now, for 2019 budget, you're getting the benefit of the construction that happened in 2017. So because of that lag, it takes a little while. So that's why 2019 budget will be better, 2020 better yet, but I just want you to keep that in mind as you work through the 2019 budget, because it's still gonna be, it's not gonna be all gems and roses.
To interrupt you a second, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, Diane and I think a lot alike in a lot of things. My suggestion would have been to wait and include that as part of your budget discussion, because there's also different methods of how you can spread that cost across the users, and you might want to look at alternatives of what makes sense moving forward. So my comment would be have that part of your budget discussions and look at options of how you might want to allocate that special charge.
And it might not necessarily be how, and it's still if. I would say first, when you get the budget numbers in and staff and your interim administrator work through that, then maybe it's not a necessity. It's just to be aware that it's an option. It's there. It's a tool.
Do you know how long the PSC approval takes?
Do you know, Russ? Okay. I just know that they said it was a short rate study. I didn't get a time frame on it. Frankly, I don't even, I don't remember. I may have, but I don't remember. I've had too many things going on.
But we're thinking, you could do it this year's budget instead.
Yes, I do. I do think, that's the impression I was left with anyway.
Good, thanks.
Anything else?
Nope.
Clerk Treasurer?
Well, the August first and primary ballots are coming next week. That's about all I have.
There was discussion about putting about the chickens on a referendum. Has that been discussed with you?
No, not at all.
Okay. Because seeing you said putting a referendum on, we need to do that.
Yes, there's.
I think that's something we had discussed as a board.
Actually, it's just something you had mentioned to me. It was never discussed.
I thought we had discussed it.
Because we've been asked so many times and nothing's been done about it, and it's never been taken up.
Yeah, public safety, I think was.
Right, because with planning and zoning, it would only go to planning and zoning if it was decided to, then the planning and zoning commission would decide how. But the village has never met to discuss and decide if.
Why don't we just put it on the next board meeting?
How much time do we have
For the referendum?
to get a referendum going?
Oh, I would have to look. I don't even think you could make it for the November
Oh, I
one.
don't think so. It'd have to be probably,
And you certainly don't want a special election for that.
No.
God, no.
It should be
It'll already be too late for November.
Yes, I definitely think so.
Then let's put it on for the agenda for next time to discuss.
Special sauce.
I thought we were going to discuss that under public safety.
Yes, it's just for the past 2 years. It's
Yeah,
never been, it just doesn't happen.
So long, why would we do this
But
again?
we've got a new chief. We can
Look to
say,
it. We should-
let her bring it up and hold a public safety meeting and put it on there.
I agree. We have time, and I think that's a better way.
I think it's gonna get so mixed up just discussing it at board, and it's gonna take so long.
Well,
We're better to do a
the
public
only
safety
discussion
meeting.
I
Don't
was
you think,
thinking,
Brian?
the only discussion I was thinking of was about putting it on a referendum.
Okay, yeah.
I think we
Yeah,
need
I mean,
to have some
In a referendum,
discussion before we think.
Yeah.
in a referendum, there's like city peeps, there's like a lot of information from Appleton we could pull, and that's a public safety thing, I think. That's more
Yeah.
like
I would
committee
put
level.
the committee, let the
Okay.
committee come up to us and.
Let's bring that to our new chief.
Yeah, that's a good.
Okay.
That'll be memorable. Chickens is our first,
Oddly enough,
She'll love it.
chickens was one of the first laws or ordinances enacted in Hortonville.
Moving on.
It was one of the first things that came on my.
It was the first ordinance in Hortonville, was about chickens and livestock, right?
Moving on.
sorry.
All right,
Carl's not here, did he leave anything for you to be discussed tonight?
Just the two ordinances that you passed, that's why last week, or last board meeting was so Carl oriented, so, because he got all his stuff in, so he's good.
Do you have anything for us, Ally?
I do. I'll make it very quick. We have already surpassed last year's summer total for registration.
Wow.
We have 775 people registered for our library program already.
Wow.
That's 3, not much, but 3 over last year's. And that was as of 5 o'clock, so I can guarantee there's more. We're registering between 2 and 5 new library patrons a day, and that's not just for the summer program, that's for the library in general, which is really exciting. And then a librarian from Lakewood was visiting this morning, just because he was in town, and he's really interested in writing a piece to propose to the local papers about the Hortonville Library being such a big part of the community. I thought that was cool. That was his initiative. He wants to do this thing for us, which, cool. That's great.
So keep in mind, the more feet that go into the library, the more revenue from owls, and the more the village's responsibility is.
Yes,
So-
that's correct. We all take step up to the plate.
That is correct. And that's all I have.
And I'm sorry, Brian, I skipped over the police department.
Not even to get personal. I have nothing. Thank you.
He was,
Bob?
Still on the chickens.
I didn't see a building report, neither did I, permit report. Presentation of accounts and other claims against the village.
Voucher listing, number 24890, 24946, in the amount of $66,619.24. Direct deposit payroll of $29,721.43, totaling $96,340.67. Water and sewer utility vouchers, numbers 10329 through 10333, total $10,675.41.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Roll.
Aye.
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 Approved. And we need to go in closed session.
I've got a comment on closed session is, since we have, the board has approved Russ to be our interim, can we have Russ come into the closed session with us? Because this is a matter that would be of interest to the incoming administrator.
That would be up to the board if we want to allow.
I don't believe that legally.
I don't have that. Yes, the board can invite anybody they want in closed session for that purpose.
You need a motion for that?
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
I don't have a problem.
Okay, we are inviting you into our closed session.
I gotta go make a pretense.
We need a motion.
I'll make a motion to go in.
Sorry, I'm forcing the state law.
85-1E, deliberating and negotiating properties and the investing.
So, yeah.
Conducting other